What does it feel like for you as an individual, you Englishman or whatever you want to call yourself, being falsely accused
Falsely accused of what
of being
particularly?
somebody else's problem, being called racist or being called whatever they're calling you? You've been blamed as white supremacy and all that. What does that
Yeah,
feel like to you as an individual?
it's strange because it's an attack that doesn't actually make a lot of sense.
I know
Because
what you
like,
mean.
well, in America, I guess you could say it's an attack that makes sense because
It
you
doesn't
have,
make sense in America either. Believe me, it makes
but I mean,
no sense.
given the history of America,
But
I
still,
suppose
it
you could.
doesn't make sense because it's not true.
Well, sure, but like
But
from the
anyway,
layman's perspective, right?
okay.
I can see the sense of it in America, but the thing is, over here, it doesn't make a huge amount of sense. I mean, London is the second biggest French city, and the French are all white. So, essentially by saying I'm a white supremacist, you're also saying I'm a French supremacist, and I'm really not. Like I'm not in favor of the way the French do things at all. And so, like when they call you these things, I think it's almost always disingenuous, because people who are actually white supremacists, people who are actually genuinely racist and hate people because of the color of their skin, they're not very hard to spot. And often they're open about it, or they used to be before, like, the big censorship hammer came down. And so it always seemed to be a disingenuous way of driving the conversation into a particular realm of morality that the conservatives don't occupy. And this is one thing that I think conservatives need to think about a lot, actually, is how do the conservatives view what the world is made up of? Because if you think about the way that the left creates the framing of their arguments, they're all abstract, universal categories. You're white, you're a woman, you're cisgendered or whatever, you're transgendered. These are not inherent to one person or one group of people.
Right.
These are things you can find anywhere, right?
Anyway,
And that's not how a conservative views the world, I think. And like I said, I'm not a natural conservative because I'm not like, I've not grown up in conservative political circles.
right.
But I've been trying to learn how the conservatives view the world being made up. And I think the conservatives view the world as being made up of relationships. It's your relationship with your wife to create the family unit that creates your children, that creates your local community that your kids go to school in, and these relationships, again, form this kind of web that is the part of the world you're trying to protect. That's what you want to conserve. That's what you want to make sure is able to flourish so your children can grow up somewhere nice. And so you can, grow old and think, right, I've done my part. I've made my small business. I've done a good job. And so when the left comes along and goes, right, okay, don't worry about any of this. We're going to talk about an abstract category. It's like, I don't think about abstract categories.
Yeah.
I'm not thinking about that at all. I'm thinking about the things that I know, the people I love, the
Yes.
places I live in,
Yep.
and I think the conservatives need to be able to articulate this a bit more clearly.
That makes sense. You're absolutely right. One last thing about that, as far as I think, who are over, is there someone or some group that is over the Democrats, the liberals, and paying them or encouraging them to act this way? Or is that just their mentality?
I think that there's definitely an international organized effort to abolish the nation state. Steve Bannon calls this the party of Davos. And I think that's a pretty good representation. You'll know the things that we're talking about when you see them.
Yeah.
Like the World Economic Forum, things like this, where it's they kind of view themselves as global controllers. Now, I just want to be very clear. This is not any one ethnic group. And it is not universal to any ethnic group. It's made up of very many different individuals who are attracted to this kind of managerial scientific politics, I suppose we could call it, where they view the world as numbers on a spreadsheet. And so they're concerned, we need to improve economic growth in Southeast Asia. Do we? I don't care about economic growth in Southeast Asia. The hell with that. I'm not bothered about that at all. I'm bothered about, how my little house in an area in Wiltshire is being destroyed by mass immigration. That's what I'm concerned about. But this kind of international managerial class is definitely a product of the sort of post-war 20th century. And I think that they've got to the point where they realize, and now especially with the COVID thing, the mask very much came off in this. And it was like, right, okay, we need lockdowns, we need tyranny, we need, the abolition of your rights. And that's an unacceptable proposition to me.
So how do we defeat that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one to which I want to make it very clear, I'm pro-democracy.
Right.
So I'm anti-revolutionary.
Yeah.
And so the question is, how did this happen and what can we do? And this happened because revolutions failed. The revolutions in the English-speaking world didn't happen. The communists knew that they failed, actually. All through the 20th century, they realized this. And it was a chap called Gramsci who was like, right, okay, well, we need to start going after the culture then. And this is one of the reasons why I'm drilling down so hard on the conservatives, saying, okay, how do you see the world? What do you build? What is it you build? And conservatives build relationships. They build and they build it on trust and honor. Whereas you'll notice that honor and trust are not words you would use among left wingers, are they? They're the first to backstab each other. They're the first to betray you. They're the first to defame you. They are the first to insult you. This is not what conservatives are like, and that's to their credit. Don't become like the left. And so what the conservatives need to do is what Andrew Breitbart was suggesting when he said, politics is downstream from culture. It very much is. And I hate to say this, but we've allowed leftists to educate an entire generation of children, possibly 2 generations now, in fact, to the point where they essentially are anti-freedom. They're anti-human rights. They think that the government is God and can tell you what to do at any given point. And so basically conservatives need to be very aggressive in articulating the moral good that comes from their political position. What can they build? What can you get? And you, of course, can get strong, healthy men. You can find, a beautiful, loving, compassionate women. You can find people who are at home in their place in the world. And I think this is where the conservatives can really win. It's on the concept of belonging. Where do you belong? Because you'll notice that the left have created this generation of young people who don't know anything and don't know where they are, don't know what they're doing. And they end up shaving their heads, chopping parts of their body off. And you see the mad videos all over like TikTok and Twitter and all this. They are people who are essentially sort of deranged because they don't have any relationships that keep them centered and grounded. They don't have friends. They don't have like solid families. They're not forming bonds. Like I find it baffling that Generation Z, I thought the millennials were bad, right? Millennials used to be the generation that had the least amount of sex. And no, it turns out now it's Generation Z. Yeah. And it's like, that's so strange. Because, I'm sure when you and I were boys, we were chasing after girls all the time. Yes. This is just something you did as a young man. Right. They don't do that now, right? The idea of, this sort of thing has all been obliterated. And this leaves them vulnerable and frightened and alone and easy to manipulate by the powers that be, who want to be like, right, okay, now you need to think of yourself as like a demi-queer gender freak or something like this. It's like, look, no, actually, there's actually, and one of the things that follows from that is uncertainty, depression, insecurity, fear. They don't know what they want. They don't know where they're supposed to be going. They haven't got a life plan. And I think this is where the conservatives can come and go, okay, look, right, this is going to sound old-fashioned, maybe a bit retrograde, but it's good for you. The conservatives are not the ones with mental health crises. The conservatives are not the ones looking for meaning in their life because they find it in their families. Meaning is found in our relationships. I don't need any encouragement to get off my ass and go to work because I know my kids need to be fed. I don't need any encouragement to get off my ass and go and fight the good fight against leftism because I don't want them chopping off my son's dick. I am very, very encouraged and I have a lot of meaning in my life because of my family, and the left don't have this. And so I think that this is where the conservatives can actually really win, because the left have really beaten down these generations. They're really harming them on like a deep level. And the problem is that the way that these people have been conditioned and raised has been irreligious, and I think it's going to be difficult to frame it in the religious way. And I know a lot of conservatives will be like, oh, come on, I really want to. And I know you do, but you have to know your audience. You have to know who you're trying to pitch to. And so I genuinely think there needs to be a secular argument made from conservatism. You don't need to challenge the assumptions of God that underlie a lot of it. That's not really very important to the average person living their daily life, But I think if you go in hard, banging a Bible and saying God says this, I don't think that's going to persuade.
That's not going to work.
No, exactly. But if you go in and say, well, look at you. Look at you. You're weak, you're sickly, you're drugged up on all kinds of, ADHD medicine, whatever. You drink sugar, pints and pints of sugar every day. You eat tons of sugar in your food. You're obese, you're unhealthy, you're unhappy. Actually, there's a way that you can come out of this and you can feel better about yourself. You can feel better about the world. You can love what's around you. You don't have to hate everything. It's not an evil world, actually. It's a good world. It took a long time for us to get to this point. You just have to know how to engage with it. And conservatives need to start making that argument to young people, I think.
Well, I know in this country, the conservatives are not doing a good job at all of explaining their point of view about life and about situation. They don't even have the nerve to put up a real challenge against the Democrats, the liberals, or anyone. It's kind of... to me, it's almost like we only have one party in America now, a Democratic Party, and that party is extreme on one end and kind of extreme on the other end. We don't seem to have a two-party system anymore.
It's even worse in Britain, to be honest. You should see what's happening with the coronavirus. So the Conservatives in this country have done nothing, practically, for the past 10 years. They've been in government for 10 years. They've done nothing. But they keep winning bigger majorities in the parliament because the left-wing party here, the Labour Party, is just like the Democrats. You can see them taking their cues on Twitter from the Democrats, but they just get more and more extreme. They go further and further to the left. And so the Conservatives keep winning by just standing still. And yet so when the left-wing Labour Party leader says, oh, well, we're going to have to go into a lockdown, right? The Conservative Prime Minister will say, we're not doing a lockdown. And then literally within a day, we'll be like, okay, yeah, we're going to do a lockdown. And so you can see them taking their marching orders from the left. And it's because they don't know what they should be doing as conservatives. They don't know what they should be protecting or building upon as conservatits. At least in America, you had Trump. Oh, my God, at least you had Trump.
The great white hope.
I love the First Amendment. Nobody loves it better than me.
I went to New York to get this. I was not a Trump fan to begin with, but I went to New York to get that damn hat because I love Trump at this point.
That's right.
He's best thing that happened to the Republicans. And DeSantis is doing a great job following in his stead. Ted Cruz is doing a great job. All of basically the conservatives worldwide, but specifically in America and Britain, need to understand, right? The left view you as an existential enemy. They want to destroy you. They're coming from within your own sort of moral framework as well and bending it so that it includes things that are evil in the same category as things that are good. You see this in the fat acceptance movement and things like this. It's like, oh, it's healthy at any size. No, absolutely not. Scientifically provable and morally repugnant to tell someone that it's right that they should be massively obese. No, it's not right. It's bad for them. It's bad for other people. It's bad generally. It's enervating. It's unhealthy. And it is a burden on society. That's absolutely not right. But the conservatives are failing to properly articulate these points. And so the left are just steamrolling them on every point, every argument. Oh, you're this, you're that. And they're failing to understand that these are not attacks made in good faith. The Republicans and the conservatives, right? They come from this position of viewing the other side of the argument as the loyal opposition. We're all, okay, we might disagree on this policy or that policy, but we all agree that it's a good country and we've got to serve our constituents and we've got to make things better. No, that's gone. That's a paradigm that existed in the last century, but doesn't exist now. Look at what the Democrats are doing in America right now. Hundreds of thousands of people are turning up at your southern border. And with the permission and endorsement of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. That's not people who love your country. Legal immigrants are more against illegal immigration than your average Democrat. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? What the hell's wrong with you? Of course the legal immigrants don't want illegal immigrants coming in. They know who those people are, and they're like, no, they're not the people you want here. And B, they worked hard to get there. They earned what they have, and so they respect it. But the Democrats, everything they do, and this on lotuses.com, we've got a historian called Bo Dade who writes amazing articles, and he wrote this brilliant one about the way the Democrats approach your politics specifically. It's laying out the instruments of the dismemberment of the republic and saying, this is what we're going to do to you. So, for example, this packing of the Supreme Court, when that came up recently, saying, like, look, we're going to take your republic and chop it up until we get what we want out of it. And that is something that every Republican should be like, right, no, that's not on. we're not changing this. It's a good system. It's a very good system. It's endured for nearly, what, 250, 300 years. Yeah. It's a great system. It's worked really well. And it's done more for humanity than almost any other country, save England. I'm just going to put that aside. But you've done a huge amount for humanity, which is why everyone from the world is trying to get into America. And so when the Democrats are just laying out, look, this is how we're going to dismember the republic, that should be the warning signal for Republicans. We do not work with the Democrats. They are an invasive force. Yeah. And again, it comes from the sort of French way of looking at things. The Democrats believe that rights are constructed by the state. And you see this in Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the rest of the squad. They're like, oh, we can just make the state do all of these things as if the state is God and can just remold reality into their particular fancy. No, there are limits to everything, especially the government. And the Republicans need to start learning, look, you're under attack. Your country is under siege from within by forces that are open about this. The Democrats do not make any bones saying this is a white supremacist country. We need a revolution. Okay, there we go. You've got an invader. You've got someone who's actively undermining your country. People shouldn't be voting for them.
Amazing, man. You're so right. You said that you are, first of all, give me a yes or no on this. Are you afraid or concerned about your own life when you're moving about in your own country?
What do you mean specifically? Sorry?
Because you're being blamed for everything, and you brought in all these people from a crazy other parts of the world who hate the country, who hate the people, who are trying to change the rules. Does that concern you personally when you move about?
Where I live hasn't been too terribly affected by mass immigration. If I lived in different areas of the country, I'd be very concerned about it. I mean, there was an example the other day. I can't remember what city it was in. I think it might be Manchester, where a white English boy and his friend were walking down the street, and a gang of Muslims who didn't know them just saw these boys, chased one of them down and stabbed them to death in the street.
Yeah, I hear these all the time.
Yeah. And then you've got the grooming gang phenomenon in the cities that have had large amounts of Muslim immigration. And of course, you've got gang violence in London and Birmingham and Manchester and all of these other big cities. And so even though I'm in a nice small area in the West Country, so it's God's own country, I'm in a nice quiet area. In the last 2 years, it's very much changed. And now our high street looks like London. It's just all of these driftless nomads of globalism who, where are these people from? Who are these people? And there's not any one ethnic group. Yeah. It's people from all over the world. It's all different kinds of people. And it's just like, okay, but like, who are they? What are they doing here? Where did they come from? Why, who let them come here? There were people living here already. What's going on? But on a personal level, I'm not immediately concerned, but I can see where the wind, the direction the ship is sailing. Yeah. And a few other ships have already crashed on the icebergs. I'm like, okay, maybe we need to start changing this before it reaches us.